Let's turn to the big focus story now. Yes, it is taking a heavy toll, and we are talking about the kind of mishaps that have been happening with an alarming regularity in toll plazas. The latest one to happen is in the Bandra Worli Sea Link. It's indeed a huge tragedy of immense proportion, as 5 people were killed on the Bandra Worli Sea Link last morning in the wee hours. Questions that we are raising is on the issue of whether the employers, the security agencies have faltered in providing safe working conditions to the toll plaza workers. Do the workers remain vulnerable in their jobs? It has become a matter of life and death for them, since their safety is a daily concern now. Toll workers face huge safety hazards, and we will take you through some of those recent incidents. And that's the reason why we say that, is it a threat to life that these workers are facing on a daily basis? Rash drivers, VVIP and arrogant netas, rogue elements, they face it all on a daily basis. Challenges for the toll employees galore. How can we make our toll plazas safe? That's the question we are addressing here on The Big Focus. So what happened yesterday is this. A tire burst in the middle of the Bandra Worli Sea Link resulted in a crash and a pile-up that left 5 people dead and 8 injured. Among the dead were an ambulance driver and the staff at the Bandra Worli Sea Link. The injured persons included 2 doctors, both of them of the rank of lieutenant commanders with the Indian Navy. Here's the sequence of events. Let's put that out for our viewers. Around 2:20 a.m., a Maruti car with 4 travelers hit the divider on the Bandra Worli Sea Link that was traveling towards South Mumbai. It had a tire burst. Because of this, 2 other cars stopped by to check on what happened. Remember, this is middle of the night. We are talking about at 2 a.m. literally. So among those who stopped by to check on this vehicle were 2 doctors. These 2 doctors were from the Indian Navy. Like I mentioned, they were trying to help the passengers who were stranded there in that vehicle that hit the divider. So right up till here, there wasn't any casualty. It was a case of a vehicle hitting a divider and another couple of vehicles stopping by to help. A guard at the CCTV monitoring room meanwhile alerted the security personnel and the toll guards, after which a crane was sent that moved the car to the 4th lane so that it is away from the expressway. And an ambulance also arrived. Toll guards stood there waving the traffic baton to the incoming cars to avoid the 4th lane. This is where the trouble began, because the toll workers were doing their job of asking the vehicles to avoid the 4th lane, literally at the risk of their lives. Because here what happened at 2:53 a.m., a Hyundai Creta driven by the accused in this case changed lanes from 2nd to 4th. Now, we are given to understand he was plugging in his battery, his phone to the battery inside the car, and he did not notice that there was a vehicle in the 4th lane. He rammed into this vehicle and the other vehicles that were parked nearby, killing 5 people in the process. The person who was speeding hit the other vehicles and the men who were on that spot looking after the vehicle that hit the divider to begin with, and 4 of them were killed, 5 in fact in all, including the ambulance driver. So what this tells us really is that the toll plazas we have in this country are accident prone, and the incidents that have happened recently this year, let's put out the visuals there. This incident from 23rd of July 2022, a narrow escape for a toll plaza worker. A truck rams into the toll plaza and overturns. Then there is this other incident that happened in September where TRS leaders vandalized the toll plaza, thrashed the staff when they asked him to pay the toll fee. It happens all the time where rogue elements, arrogant netas beat up toll workers. In September again, this year, a TRS leader in Telangana thrashed a toll plaza employee, like I mentioned, because he asked for the toll fee. In August 2022, again, this year, a man beat up a woman in the toll plaza who was a staffer again for asking him to pay up. This happened in Madhya Pradesh's Raigad district. Again, in August this year, a car driver drags a toll plaza staff for demanding a toll in Thiruvananthapuram. So these are the kind of incidents. All of those pictures, viewers, are playing out for you. What is the kind of risk that these toll workers are taking simply to collect the toll fee? Is it worth paying with your life for this process? Let me go across to our panelists joining us today here on the program. Mr. Vijay Chibber, former Secretary of Road and Transport Highways; Hormazd Sorabjee, editor of Autocar India; Dhaval Ashar, Senior Manager of Integrated Transport from WRI. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thanks very much for your time. I would like to put out this big question that here on Mirror Now we are addressing today, that our toll plazas are simply, not safe for the workers and also for the drivers, for the passengers of the vehicles that go through them. I in fact, gave a detailed explanation on why I am saying so, given the number of incidents that have happened. Hormazd Sorabjee, if you can tell us, as somebody who deals with the aspect of cars and speeding cars and the rash and negligent driving. By the way, the accused has already been arrested now for rash and negligent driving. Speed control is becoming a major hazard here, Mr. Sorabjee. What, according to you, can be done to kind of restrict these incidents?
Firstly, I think the main issue is taking away our toll plaza is dangerous. To be honest, these incidents are very unfortunate, but I think there are far more dangerous situations just being on the road rather than someone, in a toll plaza. If you see the amount of road fatalities that there are, just traveling on the roads in a way is far more dangerous occupation or just driving. And clearly we've seen what has happened. And I think it boils down to the fundamental problem is that, we are just a country of very, very bad drivers. Again, it stems from a very easy driving test, lack of proper driving training, lack of proper education, and just a culture where it's okay to jump a traffic light, it's okay to go down a wrong way on a one way, all that sort of thing. Even on a highway, you see these cars coming in the opposite direction. So it's just basically down to the way we drive. I just think we are a nation of probably the worst drivers, and all the accidents we've seen actually stem from that fact. Again, this accident which we have seen, it is just horrific what has happened. It's just inexcusable to bang into a car. Okay, it was stationary, it may not have been properly lit. Maybe that they could have put illuminated warning triangles, which is a general protocol in international countries. When you have a breakdown, the first thing you do is take out your warning triangle from the boot, put it about 20-30 feet away to warn the driver. But okay, that wasn't followed, but still, just the way it was coming, it's as if the driver didn't see what was in front of him and didn't even slow down. So clearly, he was totally distracted because there was by just looking at the video, and I'm just going by what I can see,
Yes.
You didn't see the car decelerating or the brakes locking up. He just went head on into it as if, he just wasn't paying attention.
Yes. Mr. Dhaval Ashar, the fact is that in Mumbai, there aren't enough, opportunity to speed. This entire Bandra-Worli ceiling is perhaps one of those stretches where people take liberties. They go out of control when it comes to, speeding and overspeeding. Is there a way we can address this concern? There are speed limits, of course, but people are lax in following it. And in this case as well, it has simply happened because a person took the liberty to speed. It was a free stretch at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, so I agree partly with the fact that there isn't enough opportunity to speed in Mumbai. That is only true during peak hours. And now Mumbai peak hours, Mumbai generally is seeing 3 peaks now, morning, often in the afternoon and in the evening. But anytime there is not a peak, or there are not too many vehicles, or there is an empty stretch, people speed. People can speed. So, in a city with 42 lakh sort of vehicles, I think it's fair to assume that some of them at least will speed. Now, if you look at our data, a lot of crashes also that happen sort of in Mumbai on Western Express Highway, on Eastern Express Highway. And now we have many more sort of such expressways or sort of coastal roads coming up. So there are more reasons to worry unless this is checked, but happen in the night hours also, right? Speeding clearly is the concern. In this case, the person was distracted, which is sort of another risk factor on top of. So distracted and in speeding is horrible, and it's sort of really, really sad. I mean, it pains to see this video that you're playing alongside. But what I feel, I mean, one is that, like the previous panelist said, there were certain protocols. I feel, if I don't know if it was a protocol or not, but sort of putting adequate signages a little far away and kind of those lights and all, hopefully could have sort of helped better here. But I also feel like, as sort of generally, in not just in Mumbai, I guess pretty much everywhere else, we operate in a state of non-compliance. अरे हम लोग तो स्पीड करेंगे, यहाँ तो कुछ नहीं होता है. Yes, there are speeding violation checks. Largely, we rely on what is called as ANPR cameras, automatic number plate recognition. There is sort of one I know on C-Link, on JJ and all of that. Problem is that, over time, that if you're in the range of this camera, you just slow down and then you're free to speed. It's high time now that we sort of address speed as a concern generally in the city, so much so that it becomes like a general deterrent. Imagine, कि अरे Mumbai में you cannot speed, boss, otherwise you're going to really get caught, right? So, and there are very clear strategies. I don't want to go into the details.
Very important what you are saying here, because it's a responsibility from both sides. As citizens, we must learn to comply. Compliance is an issue, and you're also saying enforcement is an issue. Are there enough monitoring mechanisms, penalizing mechanisms? How are you saying we are going to set this system in place where people will have the fear of the law not to break these rules? You said that this is a chalta hai attitude, that nothing will happen, kuch nahi ho jayega, we can speed a bit, let's go for it, let's zoom. This is the only stretch that we are getting the liberty to do so. Mr. Vijay Chibber, you have an overall picture of this problem pan-India as the former Secretary of Road Transport and Highways. Where are we failing as a country? As a former panelist said, it's not just about toll plaza accidents, highway accidents, road accidents. I'm running the figures on our screens as well. Is a huge menace in this country. We keep doing programs on this aspect that we have world's 2% of the cars, but 11% of the road fatalities. That is the situation, sir.
Yes, I think the problem is far more serious than, what happens typically in our geography is that whenever there is an accident or a VIP who's met with an accident, or a horrific accident like the one we are talking about today, then we go and try and find, the immediate cause. We say the toll plazas could be at fault or the protocols could be at fault. But I think Sorabjee has alluded to that when he says we are just not serious enough. I mean, today, the country is facing probably, I would say, the worst or the most serious public health epidemic in the form of road safety. And while the Road Transport Ministry and the minister seem to be putting their shoulders behind efforts at change, I think it's a whole effort of the society, of government as a collective, not individual efforts. And I would say, I mean, this government particularly has been able to bring about focus in areas like Swachh Bharat and water and sanitation, because the Prime Minister has put his entire political capital, which is huge in his case, behind those movements. I fail to understand why road safety is not something which is catching the imagination of politicians, other than...
And if you notice, sir, politicians are bulk of the defaulters here. That entitled neta mentality. They don't want to pay the toll. और किसी की हिम्मत हो कि हमसे toll fee मांगे, they get slapped and they get thrashed, and we are running those pictures as well. Bulk of these incidents, when we look at them and when we were researching this story, we realize these incidents are perpetrated by the netas, by politicians, the high-handedness on the toll workers. That's also another concern, maybe a little separate from the road accidents aspect that we are discussing. But since you brought up the leadership, do you think that, like you mentioned, the enough weightage and prioritizing needs to happen? Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yes, I think this is too serious a matter to be left now to efforts in small towns or parts of a big city like Bombay or Delhi. I think it requires a collective effort. We really need to wake up. We really need to this chalta hai attitude, whether it's amongst the road users or the enforcement agencies. I think that a far more seriousness, a level of seriousness has to be brought in. And we cannot now continue in the way we are. 150,000 fatalities, 5.5 lakh injuries. It means almost 20, 30 lakh individuals are getting impacted year on year, because for every fatality, there are at least 5, 10 people in the family who get impacted. For every injury, again, 5, 10, 15 people, and a lot of loss of financial capital gets eroded. So I have a feeling we are, rather than looking for these small tidbits, I think we need to really request for government to actually bring this squarely as an agenda number one.
Yes.
For a couple of years. And in that context, I mean, the road safety bill and the road safety authority,
Yes.
which was...
We need a roadmap for road safety. Let's put it as simply as that. We really need a plan in place how we will address these issues. Because if you look at this particular incident of the Bandra Worli ceiling, it literally has all the vices that you can think of when it comes to a road accident. There is the first case of a vehicle hitting a divider. So were there enough signages? Were there enough checks and balances to prevent vehicles hitting a divider? Then, of course, comes the issue of toll plaza workers hanging around in a high-speed lane, which again should be at all costs avoided. Then comes the issue of another speeding vehicle, over-speeding, crossing the speed limit. So literally everything in the book that should not have happened has happened in this case, Mr. Sorabjee?
A lot of people put a lot of it on speeding. I think for me, speed is relative, to be honest. Someone untrained can be dangerous at 30 kilometers an hour, which is well below the speed limit. On an open road, you could be doing 100 kilometers an hour. And if you're a good driver, it's an open road, nothing out, it could be safe. So, speeding...
I think we should say rash and negligent driving. May not be speeding, over-speeding or not following the...
Yeah, that's right. Yes. But again, even with rash and negligent driving, sometimes, people are just bad drivers. You could have a truck driving at 20 kilometers in the right lane, forcing people to go from the left. I think it fundamentally is down to the driver. Whatever you say, rash and negligent, bad driving, I think our core issue is, and if you see the root cause of all these accidents, finally it's down to the driver. Whether it was the Cyrus Mystery accident or this truck which rammed into the toll plaza. I mean, there was a horrific visual.
Yes.
Or what happened on the ceiling. It is fundamentally down to the driver, which really made either a judgment of error, wasn't paying attention. And frankly, we just need to, I think the root cause lies in the way we give driving licenses. I mean, in some states, it's used as an ID. It's so easy to get a driving license. People just get it as a form of ID. I mean, it's a joke. I think that's where it is. I even think to take a drastic step as even privatize the licensing system. And you have companies with which they have a good track record. Your insurance automatically goes down with those sort of let's say driving academies or institutions. So I think really the root cause needs to be addressed, and that is just making
very important point. Yes. How our systems work when it comes to issuing driving license, for instance, we need to go back and check those issues. Do you agree with that, Dhaval Ashar, that probably privatize the system of how you give your licenses to the drivers? Because Mr. Sorabjee believes that it comes down to a bad driver when we talk about these accidents.
So I do not entirely disagree. But so here's the thing, right? I mean, it depends on how we record the deaths. I mean, sometimes I've been looking at crash data for many years now, like both globally, nationally, and in the city and state. It's convenient to sort of keep pushing the focus on the driver. But, any country, and there are many countries that have actually reduced drastically road traffic fatalities. The one common principle that they've kind of followed or sort of is that, people will make mistakes, but they should not have to die for that. What it means is that you have to create a forgiving system Now, when I say a forgiving system, I'm not saying that the person who's kind of committed the mistake is just forgiven by the court of law. No, I'm not saying that, but so there are sort of, it's called the safe systems approach. They call it Vision Zero in Sweden. They've used that and they've drastically, 85% reduced crashes from beginning from 90s, in 97 when they sort of launched it there. So the solutions are there. It's pretty much it's clear. Yes, driver licensing needs to be looked at. It needs to be improved. What I'm saying, our focus just on the driver. We are, in Mumbai itself, I keep quoting 42 lakh vehicles. How many people are we going to train? People are going to continue to make mistakes. Not saying that the focus shouldn't be on that, but it's going to take a lot of time. Until then, a lot of people will still die. There are clear solutions. So just to respond to the fact at 30, yes, somebody would be sort of reckless at 30, but it's very clear that there is 80% chance that you will survive if you've been hit at 30, compared to a 30% chance of surviving when you've gotten hit at a mere speed of 50 kilometers per hour. So I think we need to focus on saving lives.
So you're saying speeding is an issue. Speeding control is a solution that we must look at. If it saves lives, that aspect must be looked at. Vijay Chibber, last word to you, sir. From an overall perspective, of course, this is a limited duration discussion, so we kept it to the issue of toll plazas. But your thoughts on concluding remarks on this subject, sir.
My colleagues on the panel, really, what are we saying? There are solutions, there are global best practices, there are global standards. We just need to adopt those standards and then enforce those standards, whether it is in the form of the quality of vehicles that are produced, or whether it's in the form of who gets a license and what is the process through which he is put by way of tests, etc., before he gets a license. It's a complete, what are the parts of the city where signages are put to slow down the traffic? What are the different ways of slowing down traffic? There are global best practices. We need to adopt those global best practices and address the fatality of 1.5 lakhs annually as a challenge which needs to get reduced. I think I agree with him that every accident need not lead to a fatality. And there are ways to mitigate it. So once you're on the road and people are driving, there will be accidents. The question is, does an accident necessarily need to lead to fatality or even serious injury? The question is, how do we mitigate that? And there are countries which have made this a part of their presidential election, an election issue. They have demonstrated their capacity to bring down fatalities and accidents. There are success stories globally. You take France, you take Spain, you take Australia. They have done it, and empirical evidence is staring at you that this all can be done. Technology can be brought in, so you don't necessarily have to have people walking around at the toll plaza. You don't necessarily have to have.
We do not even have a rule, if I'm not wrong, on jaywalking. How is jaywalking allowed in this country where most advanced countries don't allow it?
Rules
and there
are
were
all
accidents
there.
Recently in Chennai where 2 young women died because they were crossing the road.
No, rules are there. The question is enforcement. In the Cyrus case, this issue about rear seatbelt came up. Rear seatbelt has already been mandated. Now, most of us are casual about it, and it leads to the kind of loss.
That is why in the beginning of the show, sir, we said that, it's a question of us as citizens exercising our social responsibility, our safety responsibility, and the agencies who are responsible to enforce these rules. Thank you so much, Vijay Chibber, Hormazd Sorabjee, and Dhaval Ashar, for joining us on this program and sharing your views on the subject.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Let's also, in fact, while we are on this topic, tell our viewers that there was a really tragic story that happened with a 36-year-old, a Dadar resident, who had won accolades from the Maharashtra ministers and Mumbai police for saving many lives. And how he saved lives was by being there on this Bandra Worli sea link when people got suicidal and would try to jump off the bridge. Here was a man who was on many occasions awarded for preventing those suicides from happening. He's the one among the 5 who is now deceased. He is, of course, known for helping accident victims on the bridge as well. His name is Chetan Kadam. He was a security supervisor at the Sea Link Toll Plaza. He was also the vice president of one of the political parties' youth wing. He'd been employed at the Ceiling Toll Plaza since 2009. Here's the man on your screens, Chetan Kadam, who was on night duty. He had rushed to the spot when he received this message, this alert about an incident, about a car hitting a divider. But his presence in that spot proved costly. He was the sole breadwinner. He is survived by his pregnant wife, his 4-year-old son, and his elderly mother.
माझ्या पोराने एवढा वर्ष काम केलं आहे. आता त्याच्या मुलाचं आणि त्याच्या बायकोचं भविष्य करायचं त्या लोकांनी. माझा करता सवरता लेख केलाय घरातनं. त्याने एवढा वर्ष काम केलंय.
कशा प्रकारे चेतन जे होते ते लोकांसाठी कशा प्रकारे
लोकांना वाचवायचा. त्याला 2 सर्टिफिकेट भेटले तिकडनं. किती जणांना त्याने जीव वाचवला. त्याचा टीव्हीवर आलं होतं, न्यूजवर आलेलं, पेपरला दिलेलं. माझ्या लेखाचं सगळीकडे फोटो आले होते, न्यूजवर आलं होतं.
Clearly, a family is shattered, and like we discussed, if only we were more careful while driving, and if only there was greater enforcement of rules, his life could have been saved.